Chair Powell, Secretary Mnuchin, the 2 months since you were last here, the situation around the country has only gotten worse. The virus is spreading unchecked. Job losses are up. Economic growth is declining. The number of new daily COVID-19 cases is up fourfold. Daily deaths have more than doubled. In many parts of the country, the case numbers and hospitalizations are worse than in the spring. I spent much of yesterday talking to hospital leaders around my state. All feel besieged. All are doing their work. The healthcare workers, surely, as we know, are heroes. We simply don't give them enough support. Just last week, 748,000 people filed for unemployment insurance. Millions more have been out of work since April. In October, 3.4 million homeowners were past due on their mortgages. Many of them will run out of forbearance options by April. As many as 40 million renters will spend the holidays worrying that they will be evicted on January 1st if their government doesn't do its job. Behind all those numbers are real families who are doing their best, trying to figure out how to get by. During Thanksgiving week, there were hours-long lines at food banks across the country. This is an extraordinary crisis that requires extraordinary action. We've had a president who has simply given up on leading the country. And as far as I can tell, Secretary Mnuchin, you're leaving the country worse off than you found it. With that record, it's pretty obvious why 80 million Americans voted for new leadership, a decisive margin. And other than using your final months in office to work for the people whom you have sworn to serve, you appear to be trying to sabotage our economy on the way out the door. After the election, you canceled the Federal Reserve lending programs, taking away critical tools to invest in the people and the communities and the small businesses that make this country work. There is no legitimate justification for it. I met yesterday with 60 restaurant owners remotely by Zoom, 60 restaurant owners in this state, my state. All of them are struggling, as you know. Either you're purposely trying to stop President-elect Biden and Treasury Secretary Designee Yellen from getting to work for the people we all serve, or you're delusional that you think because the stock market is up, and I understand taking the lead from the president, that when the stock market's up, everything is fine. Either way, it's malpractice. It was only the end of October when you finally reduced the minimum loan size for the Main Street program to $100,000, so the program would actually work for small businesses and communities. But now, after all the waiting and adjusting, the Main Street program finally gets going. You take away another tool to help American businesses and workers. Even the policy head at the Chamber of Commerce said that shutting down the emergency lending programs, quote, closes the door on important liquidity options for businesses at a time when they need them most, unquote. It's always the same story, as you know, Mr. Secretary. When the biggest banks and the largest corporations need help, their allies in Washington spring into action. But when the rest of the country needs investment and support, you want to pretend we just can't afford it. You cited congressional intent as a flimsy justification for your decision. I can tell you right now, we didn't intend for struggling businesses to have to wait over 3 months to have access to the lifeline provided in the CARES Act. We didn't intend for the loan requirements terms to be amended several times. We certainly didn't intend for the legislation passed in March to be the only efforts the United States of America would take to fight a once-in-a-generation crisis. Anyone who has watched the news at all in the last month would know that this is a time for action, not for retreat. We watch hospitals fill up again. Our healthcare system is overwhelmed. Gig workers, self-employed workers lose their unemployment insurance just in 5 weeks. 4 weeks. Small businesses, local governments are running out of money. It didn't have to be this bad. We have the world's largest, greatest economy. We have the resources to rise to meet the challenge. But Secretary Mnuchin, you appear to believe this is the best we can do. In this election, Americans made it clear they didn't buy that. They've had enough of aiming low, of being told we can't afford it, we can't solve problems, we can't govern, we can't do this. We know we can do better. We've done it before. Remember what Bill Spriggs in front of this committee said in September? We didn't win World War II by worrying about whether or not we could afford it. We were in a global crisis. We marshaled all of our vast resources and talent to rise to meet it. We grew the economy from the middle class out. We paid down the debt with rising wages. And if we've learned anything from this crisis, it should be this, that we can do the same thing again. Remember what we did in March? Unanimously, Mr. Chairman, we came together, we took action, it made a real difference in people's lives. In the face of mass layoffs, we put money in people's pockets. We helped them pay their bills. We kept spending in this economy. We kept 13 million people out of poverty. Those restaurant owners yesterday in Ohio said their situation is more perilous today than it was back in February and March and April and May. So it means that we should do a comparable kind of action. And what we did in March helped everyone, including the stock market that you love to brag about. There's no reason other than a lack of political will that we can't do the same. A worker's about to lose her job doesn't care about that date on the calendar who's sitting at the secretary's desk. They care about results. Secretary Mnuchin, if you and President Trump won't deliver them, the least you can do is get out of the way. I know Chair Powell has been clear in previous hearings, we need more stimulus to have any chance of a real broad economic recovery. We need a big stimulus package, one that reaches beyond Wall Street, the sort of emaciated McConnell version, reach beyond Wall Street to Main Streets in Cleveland and Boise and Scranton and all over this country, that shows up in people's paychecks, not just corporate balance sheets. I hope today the American people will get reassurance that the Federal Reserve will be part of that effort. It's time for all of us to use every tool available to rise to meet this challenge.